Did you know that picking your nose can actually accelerate Alzheimer's? There are countless different studies that are coming out of the field of neuroscience recently, which are really changing our perception on the human brain and our nervous systems. I found a decentralized science DAO known as Cerebrum DAO that I believe you should have on your watch list. We are uncovering so much new information about the brain, and this is thanks to some of the billions, tens of billions of dollars actually, that are flowing into neurological research. Now, not all of that money is actually getting allocated appropriately, and that's where Cerebrum DAO is supposed to come in and help allocate some of those funds, as that's what crypto is really, really good at. In today's video, I have an interview with the founding steward of Cerebrum DAO, and I really want you to pay attention in this interview, because this DAO is going to really push the envelope for what is possible with a bio DAO.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. I'm Brian Majerski, and I'm a founding steward of Cerebrum DAO. And Cerebrum DAO is it's a bio DAO that was founded and is growing. It's a network organization. We're really focused 100% on brain health. And we look at our DAO as a community that's really driving toward accelerating solutions and cures to neurodegenerative disease and overall advancing brain health and longevity. And so that's me in a nutshell. I come from a background of software engineering. I started 4 different software companies over the course of about 25 years. My first was back in, I think 1998. I've been starting software companies ever since then. I'm new to the neuroscience field. I've been getting up the curve for the past 4 years, and Cerebrum DAO has really been a brainchild that's been in existence for over a couple years, but in the go-to-market and development stages for the last 12 to 15 months or so.
That's awesome. You guys have made a lot of progress over the last several years, and then the go-to-market the last year to year and a half. So it's really nice to see all of the work coming to fruition here. As we speak right now, the token sale is happening, correct? So the token generation event to actually bring everything to market.
Yeah, correct. So token generation event's underway. We're doing it via the BioXYZ Launchpad. It's a 4-day auction. We're selling our governance token to the public. 5% of the supply is available. The governance token is called Neuron. And it's apropos of the brain. Yeah. And it's even so close to the neuron that we've even modeled it after the number of neurons in the human brain. So there are going to be 86 billion neurons available through Cerebrum DAO as governance tokens. 5% are up for auction, and we'll be trading shortly after that on your favorite DEX.
I like those little Easter eggs that different projects do, like making it modeled after the number of neurons in an average brain. That's it's just a fun little thing for people to see.
Yeah, we have one neuron for every neuron in the human brain. It's a nice little thing to talk about. So, and it's a nice little fact that people will now actually know.
Right? Yeah, it'll stick in one of their neurons. When we actually went out to lunch while we were in Dubai for Token 2049, and it was interesting getting to know you, because I know you had said you're just now starting to dive deeper and deeper into the world of neurology and getting to learn about all these different neurological deficiencies and ailments that people suffer from. But you yourself are someone who is really focused a lot on like health and longevity. And it seems you're pinpointing a lot of your efforts here on the neurological side of all of that, and making sure that not only are we able to like survive longer, but have our brain intact still during that survival. And so it's really like, it's something that people overlook, right? The increase of lifespan, but forgetting about the increase of health span. And so I know that you're big into that side of it all.
Yeah, no, 100%. So when we do our presentation on this, I present often. I just say, hey, our bodies are outliving our brains, and so you see this in the statistics, right? We have an aging population. Modern medicine, for all however, whatever you want to think about it, it's keeping us alive longer. It's not necessarily keeping us healthier longer, but we are living longer. And even if we're living healthier longer, it doesn't necessarily mean that our brains are keeping up. And, it's interesting when you step back and you look at this from a broader perspective, because societal norms kind of creep in, and then you just kind of become complacent about this stuff. And And there's an inflection point about maybe 5 years ago with scientific research and data about the brain that I think is starting to change the mindset of people thinking about their brains and the brain longevity. And the societal norms that I talk about really are like senior moments, right? Or brain farts is another thing that it's like, oh, you forget something, you said, I just had a brain fart. Well, we kind of normalize this stuff and we just say, well, we're getting older. So of course my cognition's going to decline. Of course, I'm not going to be as sharp as I used to be. But it doesn't really have to be that way. I mean, the science does show that, from a brain health standpoint, your frontal lobe develops in your mid-20s and your cognition starts to decline in your mid-40s, giving you 20 years of a peak brain performance. And that's kind of depressing, right? But the science has started showing that actually it only declines in your mid-40s if you do nothing about it. And there are a whole bunch of strategies and modifiable lifestyle behaviors and things that you can do to not only maintain, but even continue to grow your brain performance and your mental vitality. And so we're starting to uncover a lot of that. But the research that popped out was specifically tied to dementia and neurodegeneration because, and another societal norm has been, we're starting to know more about us and starting to be able to diagnose and pre-diagnose a lot of things about our genetics, for example, or our epigenetics and that. So there are ways to know if you're predisposed to neurodegeneration genetically, right? And there are ways to know, like, are you trending toward that, but not there yet? People never wanted to know that in the past, right? They said, well, I don't want to know because there's nothing I can do about it. That's what got me into this whole space in the first place is billions of dollars and 30 years of research. And we have, butt kiss for solving dementia and neurodegeneration. And I'm like, well, if the next 30 years play out, we're all screwed, right? And I've got a young child that's got a specific risk factor on neurodegeneration that brought me into the space in the first place. But the research has now shown that even with certain genetic markers and even with certain risk factors, if you undertake some of these modifiable lifestyle behaviors, you could actually delay the onset of neurodegeneration. You can possibly prevent it, even with certain genetic markers for it. And you can also extend and improve your mental vitality well beyond your 40s. And so there's a whole bunch of things that we can do. The research is coming out. People are now aware of it. So they're saying, hey, bring it on. Especially the longevity movements made people aware of living longer and doing better things for their bodies and trying to measure their age as a result of that. And are they actually, extending their lifespan or health span? But not much has come out on the brain and people are looking for solutions. And so I think the timing is really great to do something here that's community driven because now people can kind of co-participate in the creation of those solutions.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important that people understand when it comes to your body, there's always something that you can do to either slow down a degeneration or just completely reverse it or stop it. I know, like, when people hear of genetic things that they're going to inherit from their family, it often makes them afraid. But even within the world of genetics, we're starting to realize that, like, some of these things don't have to be as permanent as we've previously thought them to be. I'm curious, like, when I know we're just opening the door to a lot of the discoveries here, but what are some of the, like, things that you can cause or accelerate the degradation of your brain and make people have those senior moments a little bit sooner, like different habits?
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of them, and a lot of this goes counter to, again, you think societal norms. I can tell you, a lot of it goes counter to what we think we need to do to be successful in society today. So, you'll hear people bragging about being multitaskers and how good they are at multitasking. Multitasking is proven to be toxic for your brain health. It's not good for you. It actually does deteriorate your cognitive performance. And so being able to focus on one thing at a time and cut out distractions will not only help you maintain your cognitive performance, but it'll help you be more productive on that task and more effective on that task. And it actually finds more time in your day. Interacting with others is shown to be an important thing. Social isolation will drop your performance down.
That's interesting.
Sleep,
I hadn't
sleep,
heard that
diet,
before.
exercise. Yeah, interacting with others is a huge thing. I'll tell you the two most powerful things you can do definitely. One is good social connections and good social circles, and even for introverts. I mean, it does get tiring after a while. I am one of them, but it's important. You can't just go into social isolation. It's terrible for your brain health. And the second is learning new things. And there's these people gravitate to things like, well, I'm going to play games, right? I'm going to do Sudoku. I'm going to play crossword puzzles. I'm going to take these brain games and they'll teach your brain to do one thing well. Learning new things is more like playing a musical instrument, learning a new language, dance. Dance has got so many aspects to it that is really strongly positive on your brain health in terms of like what you have to do to actually do it. So these are things that are coming out now, and you're starting to see research demonstrate that it works, ways to measure it. We're working with some research institutions that can actually measure your brain health on a comprehensive basis across these things, like interacting with others, like social connections, like sleep, diet, exercise. And then there's some even like, we don't have to depend only, I guess the long story short on this is we want to develop therapeutics. We want to cure these diseases. We want to, when the pathology is starting, we want to reverse it and prevent it. Those may take 5, 10, 15 years, 20 years to do. There are a lot of things now that you can do that are more digital oriented or strategy oriented or even natural product oriented that can help give you the support to maybe give you 5, 10 years of extension, and then we can let the therapeutics take over.
I mean, one of the things even that popped in my head that sounds like a good idea, given that building a community and learning new things would be advantageous to people's brain health, it sounds like you're advertising joining Cerebrum's DAO and getting into the Discord and the Telegram groups and all the activities and building out a community of people who have a like-minded interest. So it sounds like a very efficient plug. Make sure you guys, like, anyone watching this right now, definitely, I'll put all of the links in the description for all their socials and different ways that you can get involved. And make sure you go follow them on socials, retweet this, put this out there so that everyone can see it. I want to know more specifically though what Cerebrum DAO is focused in on for the foreseeable future, like the short, mid, and long term.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Cerebrum DAO kind of, I founded it out of frustration. And, my youngest daughter, she has Down syndrome. People with Down syndrome get, so they unfortunately, they have the genetics that give them early onset Alzheimer's dementia with pathology in their 30s and symptoms and ultimately death in their 60s. And unfortunately, that's not something that can be reversed with these modifiable lifestyle behaviors. There's 1% of the population that, has these types of markers. There are 3 markers, and Down syndrome's got one of them, that this will happen. So they need therapeutics. And so I got into this out of just pure frustration because, it was 30 years and, I watched the NIH budget for Alzheimer's disease go from $300 million to $3 billion annually over the course of 10 years. And, no real results have come out of that yet. We still have no effective therapeutic against it. You look at other brain diseases, Huntington's, Parkinson's, ALS, and it's a similar story. There's a lot of money going into it and really don't have anything effective in most of those areas yet. And, all these people really need it, and there's not much they can do about it until these therapeutics come along. So when we said, okay, how do we make the next 30 years different? Like if I want my daughter to be able to stop this from happening when she's in her 30s and the pathology isn't going to develop or it can be stopped or reversed, what needs to change? Are we going to lobby the government to spend more money? If we go from 3 billion to 30 billion, is that going to change it? Probably not. Can I create a foundation? Well, a lot of foundations already exist. Is that going to make a difference? Probably not. Do we do an impact fund? Well, impact funds have to promise investment returns on a certain time horizon that have to be very limited in focus. So I'm probably not going to create a movement around that. And so when it came down to like, how can we do this? I said, well, you know what? Crypto tokens and blockchain networks are fantastic at coordinating talent and capital globally to go after a common mission. So why not brain health. And why not do this through a blockchain mechanism in a global organization? And so our primary and initial focus, we gravitated into the decentralized science movement. We love DeSci. We've been part of the Molecule BioXYZ group. We coordinate with a lot of the other bio DAOs that are doing similar things to us. And our initial focus was, okay, well, let's go fund research. Let's build a community organization. Let's identify promising research projects that are translatable. Let's look at a broader landscape where we can take more risk and or have, a different intervention than the NIH and others have taken, and maybe treat this brain health thing as an aging condition and slow down the aging process, and we can improve brain health that way and have some breakthroughs. And so that's where we start. And so right now our focus has been funding research that we can fund through the IP NFT model, and then translate and fractionalize into IP tokens. We set 3 focus areas for the DAO. We said neuroinflammation. If we can stop inflammation, neuroinflammation in particular, that's going to have a market increase on the improvement of healthy brain years and prevention of brain health illnesses. Blood-brain barrier. If you think about it from, the past, decade has been about the microbiome and the leaky gut and preserving gut health. Well, you know what? The blood-brain barrier protects your brain because your brain doesn't have natural defenses. It deteriorates the same way. It will degrade with aging and inflammation, and what you'll have is a leaky blood-brain barrier, which causes toxicity in your brain. If you can actually stop that from happening, you're going to prevent some brain diseases for a lot of the population.
It is just as scary as it sounds for everyone listening. It is just as scary as it sounds.
And mitochondrial dysfunction. So we're focused on those areas. We're about to put up for a governance vote a collaboration with VitaDAO, where we're co-investing in a IP NFT developed by a company around mitochondrial dysfunction tied to brain longevity. And so it's a promising therapeutic pathway that we're really excited to be a co-investor in. So that'll be probably our first IP NFT project that gets approved, I think probably early next week. And so we're doing this with the community, but really then the second thought kind of popped in. It's like, well, this community, the DAO, the power of the DAO is the community, right? And we got a community of people with diverse skills and interests and capabilities, all, passionate about brain health and living longer and living healthier longer brain span, brain healthy years, cognitive performance. And so if we can really harness the power of this community, not only are we pooling some capital and funding things that probably should have gotten funded but are ignored by the centralized funding sources, but what else can we do to help researchers that come to our DAO to develop therapeutics move faster or move more efficiently, right? We can be more efficient. And so we're looking at ways to bring product, pre-therapeutic products, so digital health products, natural products, and other things where we can, as a DAO, we can be kind of finding these things that are going to help people with their brain health, vetting the science, and only bringing highly qualified solutions to our community. And if they're a token holder in our community, they'll get benefits from that, like discounts, or maybe even be able to participate in the future development of that product by sharing their data in exchange for neuron tokens to advance research. Obviously, anonymized and private, but so we're looking at a lot of different ways where this is a different organization. It's not just an investment vehicle. It's not just a funding vehicle. We are a translation vehicle, but we're also seeking to leverage the power of the community and hopefully data and models to make this the place where if you want to do something in brain health, you come here because we've got the platform for you to
get the resources. The entire DAO model, especially what it's kind of becoming with the help of Molecule and BioXYZ and you guys, the different founders who are actually creating these bio DAOs, it's really like it's a good virtuous loop, a good virtuous cycle. And I've gone over it several times on my pages here, but like ultimately you can think about it like an efficient capital allocation machine. And that capital doesn't necessarily just have to be a stable coin or fiat or even crypto. Like that capital can be data. Like you were just saying that people could allocate their data towards different research mechanisms that they want to do. So if you want to participate in a cohort study and then receive the tokens for governance in contribution for that, so that you can then vote on what gets done with the results of that research study. It's a nice little loop, because then everything feeds back into funding more science. And ultimately, the people who hold the tokens are going to be the people who have not only a vested interest, but then like most of the time a personal interest. Like part of the reason that I'm personally so excited about what you guys are doing here is I personally have a brain tumor, a benign brain tumor in my frontal lobe. So it is benign, but it took years of meeting with neurologists in order for them to finally be like, yeah, it looks like it's benign, it's not growing. And so we can just kind of like keep an eye on it and hope that that's what it is. But I was labeled like the mystery patient for years through high school and then into college. And then like my dad, probably 10 years ago, my dad had a stroke where he lost like 60% of his cerebellum. So your cerebellum does balance control. And like he was told he wouldn't be able to walk again. He's now able to walk on like balance beams and stuff. He actually like regrew some of the neurons, which is like not usually ever heard of.
That's not usual.
Yeah, it was very, very obscure to see it, but it was like knowing that those types of patients exist out there where it's like defying the odds in some sense. It gets me interested to see like maybe we really don't know anything about the brain, and we need to like really start funding stuff to figure out what the hell is running us.
Yeah, we know a lot, but we know little relative. It's kind of like the universe, right? We think we know a lot, right? But
Yeah,
we like realize that we know next to nothing, of what the actual space is. So, we found this with the community. That's what's been really powerful. Everybody's got a brain, and everybody has, friends and family that all have brains of different ages. And so inevitably I have these conversations, and, 90% of the time somebody's got a story, either themselves or their family or, friend network or something like that. It's relatively close to them. And so there's a growing interest in this, especially as we're starting to learn more, especially more of the empowering stuff, like what you can do, right? Neuroplasticity, like this whole neuroplasticity, it's a powerful thing. And the more that you understand neuroplasticity, and the power of the brain to kind of heal and grow itself, the more you can enable, like, what can I do to help my brain, right? What can I do to help my brain? Because I can, the potential of it is so much more than what I realize if we can just understand those strategies and tools. And that's got people excited. So we see a lot of people coming in with those family stories and wanting to do something about it, wanting to know more. And then as they find out more, they're amazed by like the new things they learn. So
yeah, it's really nice. It's one of my favorite things about the entire space is people like with a passion coming together to learn and progress stuff forward without a lot of the friction that comes with traditional models. I know that you guys, you already said that you're working with Molecule for the IPNFT, or was it with VitaDAO with it?
yeah, well, so we're co-investing the mitochondrial dysfunction project. So that's going to be up on our governance forum, and for a vote. Already been discussed within our community and evaluated. So that's VitaDAO. We're partnering with them. VitaDAO and Cerebrum DAO are co-investing in the IPNFT. We are part of the molecule ecosystem too. So, we do leverage the IPNFT framework, and have been, part of BioXYZ, and it's been a great community to be part of.
Do you guys have any community focused incentives coming up? Anything that's like focused on bolstering your community, giving them a reason to be there outside of funding the IPNFTs?
Yeah, I mean, we do. We're about to. We just had discussions in the last 2 days on the organization side of adding a working group around products, and so we are intent on bringing products into our community, and providing Neuron token holders with discounted access to those products, possibly early access to it, possibly data sharing opportunities within those products. I can say we're in a serious look at a brain health app, that we may bring to our community and allow discounted access to it. And also, even within the app, possibly participating in purchasing neurons and also participating in some of the research. And so those are early discussions still, but I think at least the product availability could come later this year to our neuron token holders. We're taking a serious look at a brain health supplement right now that's been backed by some rigorous science. As you know, many brain health supplements are on the market that do quite well financially that have no science behind them, and are placebo or don't work at all. So we're trying to get above the snake oil and vet the science and put a stamp on products and give our community discounted access to those. We're looking at possibly developing or co-developing some wearables to help with sleep and meditation. So these are things that are in the roadmap right now, some active discussions, and we're just, people that join our community that want to get involved with the product working group are going to get to work on those projects and help determine which of those come out and how they look. And then people who are neuron token holders should expect us to be bringing some product to the neuron community, in the next several months to, 24 months. I would hope that we're going to have 2 or 3 of these products out to our community over the next 24 months for sure.
The physical products are always really good for community building because it gives them like a tangible thing they can hold on to, even if it's just an app, which the app sounds like something really fascinating. I imagine it'd be kind of like a journal for your neurological development over your time, right? Where I don't know what the app's can actually look like, but I imagine if you're doing some kind of cognitive tests or little games that you can keep track of and like documenting your mood and such like that, it's really one giant cohort study, but it kind of acts like a personal journal for individuals, if that's the route that, if I'm correct in my imagination.
The app is based on research license from a major research university that's been vetted through longitudinal study and publications. It'll have an index for your brain performance, so you can track it longitudinally. And we have a portfolio of strategies that are ways to improve your brain health around these things that I talked about, like interacting with others, learning new things, focus, cutting out multitasking, and such. And what we're doing with the app, or what our partner is doing with the app, is kind of meeting people where they are, finding something in your life that you feel like you need help or improvement with, connecting it to why that, here's a strategy that helps your brain health and why this is a brain health challenge. And then introducing the rest of the world of brain health to the users. And there'll be rewards and incentives kind of baked into it as well. So we think it's a nice natural fit for the DAO, and a good community product too.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you guys really have a good understanding of what is needed to bolster a community and make a successful DAO, and rightfully so. I know you guys have been working on it for a while. You guys, when we talked at that lunch, like, you guys are very competent with everything. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, but not really. A lot of people are going to be watching this to gain insight on the token. I know I made them wait a little bit here before I started asking about it. So hopefully they understand what it is that they're trying to truthfully speculate on. You guys have the sale going on right now. Are you allowed to speak to some of the tokenomics, the valuations? You've already spoken to a lot of the different utilities and use cases that you plan on bringing to the token, which is wonderful, because I know a lot of projects don't ever give any utility beyond just the governance. Anything you can speak to about the token sale and all of that?
Yeah, so token sales, so 5% of the supply. So we have 86 billion neurons. 5% of that is going up for auction. We're seeking to raise a minimum of $500,000 in the auction, and there'll be a minimum price based on that. It's going to be like $0.000117 per neuron. And you can bid at the BioXYZ Launchpad in wrapped ETH. You set the amount that you want and the price you're willing to pay, and the auction will clear. And if your price bid is at or above the final clearing price, your order will get filled. If not, you'll get refunded, and you'll have an opportunity to buy on the secondary market, which will likely be, Uniswap for the near future anyway. So that's the mechanics for that. You can apply a valuation on that. The valuation will be set wherever the auction clears, ultimately. So depending on how much demand there is and how many people bid higher prices, that'll determine what the final valuation is on the token.
And people have 4 days to bid those prices?
Yeah, 4 days. So it'll be open through 3 p.m. Central European time on Tuesday, April 30th.
Beautiful.
And so that's when the auction closes. So anytime until then, you can go to BioXYZ Launchpad, connect yourself, and you can bid to own neurons in the DAO. You can also and then look, if that doesn't work and you don't want to buy them on the secondary exchange, come into the DAO. We're going to be publishing a compensation policy shortly afterward, and there are going to be plenty of ways to earn neurons through doing work for the DAO as well. So we have 55% of the supply is reserved, and it's going to be reserved for compensation, rewards, future fundraisers, and things, and strategic partnerships. So we definitely have ways for people to earn neurons.
Will that act as the treasury to fund different initiatives as well, or is that a separate fund?
The neurons or the funding raised from the auction?
I guess both. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the funding raised from the auction will definitely be used to fund projects. And so that's, it's going to be a small part funding operations, and that'll be the compensation policy. And then the majority of it will be used for funding projects and products that we hope will be revenue generators. And part of the thing for these DAOs too, you got to look at sustainability. So it's not just like, you get a capital gain. It's like, it's a adrenaline hit, right? You get one shot and you get a boost and the treasury goes up, but then, your burn rate will deplete it. So, we will license therapeutics that we develop, but that could be 5, 7, 10 years out before you start seeing royalty streams outside of capital gains. And so some of these product plays help generate revenue for the DAO. So we have sustainability for the DAO. And, that can be used to fund other projects as well. So we kind of got like a perpetual motion machine in that regard. So we could use that 55% of treasury. Yeah, I mean, we could do a secondary sale, raise some more capital from selling the tokens, depending on how we feel they're being priced in the market. It's really up to the governance of the Neuron token holders at that point in terms of how we use the rest of the treasury.
Okay, that's good. Another question, kind of more of like the insight behind the building out of everything you guys have had for the last several years. What's kind of been like the biggest challenge that you and your team have faced when it comes to building out both the community, but then like the actual DAO itself, and like setting up the connections and getting involved and building out this network of projects that you can bring to life?
Yeah, and it's been you just keep plowing forward, right? Like setting mission and vision is important. Having a compelling story and building community, like that's the hardest part, and it's the part that takes the longest. And once it starts taking hold, I find it has a virtuous cycle to it, where if you get a good core community that's in it for the mission, they start doing some really interesting work, and then they start in compelling ways attracting the next cohort of people, and the next cohort, and the next cohort. And that's kind of how it happened. When we intentionally started outreach with the community, which is probably middle of summer last year, maybe 8 months ago or so. We just started doing some initial outreach, but it's not like you can just kind of pop out on Twitter and and then do some podcasts, and all of a sudden magically this community is just going to appear. We started telling our story that way, but we extended a weekly invitation to an onboarding call, and we just said, look, every Tuesday at this time, we're hosting an onboarding call. We promoted it, And, we had a couple of people show up, and you go tell the story like I'm telling the story now. 1 week later, we do the same thing. A couple more people show up, you tell the story. And then out of those, like a couple would say, hey, I'm really interested in this. And then we would onboard them. We'd have an interview with them. So, what are your skills? What would you like to do? How much time do you have? And we're just building this right now. This is all missionary work. There's no promise of any compensation. We're just trying to get this set up from scratch. And, lo and behold, after doing that for, many, many weeks where you're just dealing with 2, 3, 4 people at a time, the calls started getting bigger. And the next thing you know, you had 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people that were onboarded and were active in the community, and more people taking interest. And so it was an effective way of building a community, but I think the mission and the vision and having, a couple of the core people that were behind it on every single one of those calls, telling the story every single time, was important. And that's kind of how it got started. Then you face the pains of like, okay, well, what are we building here? And you got to figure it out, and you start laying some infrastructure. And then that starts taking hold, and you're like, okay, well, are we supposed to be getting projects? Okay, where the hell are those going to come from? Because you can't just put up an advertisement and say, hey, contact me to fund your research. That's just not how it works. So we had to go find interesting projects that are mission aligned, reach out to the researchers and say, hey, there's this thing called a DAO. And we'd like to talk to you about possibly funding your research. And that led us, to making some connections with universities and tech transfer offices, which started building our pipeline a little bit better. But thankfully, we've had some really interesting, like when I say it takes like a village to do this stuff, it's like you say, I'm a neuroscience DAO. So people think, well, I got to be a cognitive neuroscientist or a neuroscience drug developer. And, couldn't be further from the truth. We had people come from venture capital, non-health tech, non-biotech that are instrumental in setting up our entire infrastructure of how we process our deal flow, right? And so we got like an entire deal flow processing system set up because one person came in and said, I'm going to build this for you. Same thing on the community building side, the Discord setup side. There's a lot of talent out there. And as the DeSci ecosystem builds, what I've found is there are a lot of people that have done some great work in BioDAOs that were a little bit later, but did really good work, that learned a lot, that are looking for the next BioDAO to be a little bit earlier too. Or are like, this BioDAO, I had a really good time here. They're doing great work, but that mission isn't as core to me as brain health is. And I'm going to come to brain health and contribute. So we're benefiting from the fact that other people are doing this in other places and they've learned some lessons. And so we can kind of skip some steps as well. And I expect that's going to be the same for, people that saw what we did in Cerebrum in the last, 12 months are, going to take those learnings and help another DeSci project as well.
Yeah, it's the same with most successful companies. Like you always hear about the PayPal mafia. All the founders of PayPal went on to create like their own mega corporations like Tesla and then Palantir and stuff like that. Are you still going through and having these weekly vetting calls for anyone who wants to contribute?
Nice. So I'll tell you what, this is a great story. It tells you how dedicated our team is. We've onboarded, we're approaching 100 people that have gone through those calls. And so they've done one of those calls, and then they followed up and had a one-on-one and onboarded. So we definitely have a person that is a community zealot for us. He has literally done over 80 one-on-one interviews to onboard people into the DAO. So knows people like personally. So it's a great community. These are the touches that you need, for a community, right? Especially a decentralized one where people don't meet in person, and occasionally they'll even meet through video like this. So.
Yeah. Now, is that solely for people that want to contribute to the DAO itself? Like, could I join the Discord
you can jump in the Discord and you can jump in the Discord. What it'll do is it'll get you into one of our working groups, which open up some channels where, we're discussing projects and actually doing some more work. But the general Discord, anybody can kind of join. They can lurk, they can participate. They can see what's going on. There are plenty of channels of active discussion that we're sharing things on. But then certain other working groups are private channels where you got to go through the onboarding and get assigned into a working group, and then those channels will open up for you.
Okay, that makes sense. That's smart. You got to make sure you have people who are actually dedicated to the cause, ready to be there to help out.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned efficiency, and that's you know, I've done this talk through a couple of summits now, where just I've been through a lot of DeSci events, and over time they tend to kind of be repetitive in some regards. And so I kind of wanted to change and we'll talk about Cerebrum DAO, but let me talk about a topic. And that became the translational gap, or the valley of death. And it gets down to what's a DAO going to do that's different here. And I think it's around designing mechanisms to help kind of address a lot of the culprits that are responsible for the translation gap. And a lot of that becomes these, the community engine, the hive mind, the sharing of data. All these things are meant to make capital allocation more efficient. That's my point. It's let's not go from $3 billion to $30 billion, but let's just spend that $3 billion a lot more intelligently. And if
you had given a good presentation at the DeSci. Oh my God, you'd given a very good presentation at the Token 2049, the side event for DeSci that Vita DAO had hosted. Just for everyone watching, what is the Valley of Death? Could you give a very brief overview? Because that was something I'm glad you brought up right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And then I literally put a slide does the Valley of Death exist, and what is it? Because
you caught my eye with it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just, at least how I've heard it, and then especially around some of the spaces in DeSci, it gets attributed to a funding issue. These things die out. It's like crossing the chasm. They just run out of funding. And I didn't say, I think I said this at DeSci London and not the Dubai event, but it's well, I can tell you, being an entrepreneur for 25 years and being in that community, I can tell you the number of entrepreneur stories that are just I had the best freaking product in the world, everything was going well. Nobody would, we just couldn't get enough funding to kind of do it. We ran out of, we didn't have this funding, or nobody would fund us or whatever else. And that person, it wasn't that it was a great product. They didn't figure out how to translate their product to a viable business model. And so it's not that the funding doesn't exist. There's gobs of money out there. It is more about, to me, the Valley of Death is you've got, they call it bridging from bench to bedside. So how do you take something from the lab, and we got all this money going into research and bench research and lab research and primary research, and then so much of it just fizzles out and never makes it into a therapeutic. And, they got this thing now. We had Moore's law in computing, which is why, we've got a supercomputer in our pocket, in less than 30 years from the first personal computer. They call it Eroom's law. So it's Moore spelled backwards in biotech, that it's instead of becoming cheaper and faster to innovate, it's becoming more expensive and slower exponentially. And so if a drug costs you $2 billion today, in 7 years, it's going to cost you $8 or $10 billion or something like that. And it's because of this translation gap. And so there are a whole bunch of things that go on between taking research from the lab to a therapeutic. And my question was a different question. It's are we overfunding non-translatable research? And so if we can do a better job of understanding what has potential, or cutting losses sooner, then we can more efficiently allocate capital. We can have a better hit rate, and we've got more capital going into successful outcomes, as opposed to kind of just getting burnt because nothing translates. And so it's a bigger question. It's not to say basic research isn't important. I think there's always, we have a need for exploring and just, not expecting anything out of it other than just learning something. It's just, is it overfunded, right? And should we be more intentional about what's translatable so we get more impact outcomes for humans, right? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not going to matter much if we're not getting things that are helping people. And so what I did, I found a paper, and there were like 10 things called the culprits of the translation gap, or the valley of death. I think what Paul Kohlhaas called it, science friction. Not science fiction, friction. That's the friction in the system. And so what we're looking at with the DAO is how can the DAO kind of look at each of those culprits, and what mechanisms do we have as a network organization to make those go away, right? Let's get rid of these. Or design hypothesis, lack of academic incentives, government funding is the primary source. There's some low-hanging fruit in there, but there's some more complex ones that we need to do. But ultimately, I think the DAOs have an opportunity to more efficiently deploy capital to translatable research.
I think it's really virtuous. I like it a lot as an entire model, right? Web3, specifically crypto and blockchain, is really here to innovate and change the status quo for how things are going. And I like to see different organizations, different groups of people like you, Brian, who are here to actually attempt to push something forward and change it. Got to find that healthy balance between just random shooting fish in a barrel when it comes to research, and actually organized translation, getting things from bench to bedside. So
yeah. No, and it's been fun too. It's intimidating, but I think it's been good that I've had a healthy dose of naivete with this, and that I don't come from neuroscience or or drug development. That in some cases I don't know what I don't know, so I'm definitely much more willing to probe in these areas where I think I've heard a number of times oh, that's that's dumb, or that's not going to work, or this is why it can't work, or this is why this isn't broken. And I'm just I'm not quite buying that it's not broken, right? So,
I like that kind of person. Resonates more with me, because the people, a lot of times you go to college, you go get an education, and you're told how to think, you're told what is possible and what's not possible, but that stops you from asking questions that might unlock a door.
Yeah. You got to give yourself some freedom, to be, naive or stupid, right? But then you got to be smart about what you do with that, though.
Yeah, you got to be stupid in a smart way.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
That's good. How can people find you? How can people get a hold of you if they want to contribute? What would be the best way for outreach for anyone watching?
Yeah, me personally, I'm on Twitter. It's just my first initial last name, B. Majerski. You're welcome to follow me. I'm definitely promoting what I'm working on in brain health there. Cerebrum DAO is on Twitter. It's at Cerebrum_DAO. Our website, cerebrumdao.com, is a great, that's the gateway to everything. You can find our Discord there. You can find our resource hub there. You can find our white paper, our team, everything. And join our Discord. Our Discord's, where everything's happening, including our governance forums. When we are thinking about voting on something, it's discussed in the Discord. It's viewable by everybody. You don't have to even hold tokens to see it before it goes up for a vote. So that's by far the best place to go. Those are our handles.
Amazing. Any closing thoughts for people watching? Any tips and tricks on how to not have neurological deficits in your 40s?
Just, live a brain healthy life. Slow down. You got to slow down to speed up. Don't, it's some of it's counterintuitive. You can be a lot more productive by being more focused, less multitasking. Take a brain break. We have these things called brain breaks. It's 5 minutes of doing nothing, and that doesn't mean go listen to a podcast. Sorry, Patrick, but it's literally give your mind a break for 5 minutes and reset. And these are counterintuitive, right? You get a space of time in your day today. You want to fill it with something, because otherwise you feel like you're falling behind, and that's the opposite of what you need to do for your brain health. But yeah, what I'd say.
Counterintuitive. Thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, no, and get some neurons too. This is one of the few places where you can actually get neurons.
Time is your most valuable asset, so hopefully this was worth investing it into. It was definitely worth my time getting to talk with Brian. He is a smart individual, and I really am bullish on this team of founders. I think they're going to do really well over the next few years. Let me know down below what your thoughts on everything was, and who should I interview next.